Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another story of the shot. Today, I'm excited. I've got Emma Price here with me, and she's got this beautiful photo of a great gray owl. How's it going, Emma?
It's going good. How's it going, Ray?
I'm going good. I'm going good. I'm doing good. I'm going all over the place. So yeah, I guess that is an accurate way of saying it. Are you
Mhm.
excited for
That's
spring
awesome.
coming back?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Excited
definitely.
for spring boiler season here in Jersey and just getting out there more and everything like that.
Definitely. So it's spring, it's about to warm up. Let's change gears and go back to
Mhm.
when you took this photo. A little bit of a different scenario, a little bit of a different season. Let's hear the
Yeah, for
story.
sure.
Like, how did this shot come about?
All right. So this was a shot that I took last January, and this is a great gray owl, and this is a bird that I've always wanted to see and wanted to photograph. So I remember one of the first times that I had ever like seen a photo of a great gray owl was actually back when I think I was like 6 years old, and I had this. It was a children's book, but this wildlife photographer had written it, and he had all these photos of owls and wildlife that he had that were like the characters in the book.
Oh,
And I
nice.
remember there was a great gray owl in it, and I remember just thinking like, "Wow, that's such a cool bird."
Yeah.
And then, as I got older and really got into birding and photography, that still was always a big target of mine that I wanted to see and photograph. So, being in New Jersey, I knew I was gonna have to travel
Yeah.
somewhere to try to see one, obviously. So, I decided that probably one of my best bets was gonna be to do a trip to Minnesota. So
Yep.
last winter, me and some of my friends planned a road trip out, 20-hour long road trip out to northern Minnesota.
So let me ask you a
So,
question.
mhm.
Did you plan this really far in advance? Was this like months in the making, or was this like a last minute, like, hey, let's go for it? How did that
Th-
play out?
I've had trips that are kind of both that have been last minute
Yeah.
and far planned, but this was actually like pretty far in advance. Like I knew that I wanted to do this trip like almost a year in advance. Like I
Gotcha.
kind of had thought about doing it the year before, but at that point I'm like it's going to kind of take a lot to pull this together,
Yeah.
especially now I'm in college and so are some of my friends or my friends are working. So I kind of had that idea in mind, but I think I started like kind of roughly planning it out, I think, like, in September,
Cool.
and then this was in January, so,
Okay.
like, the actual planning of it, I think where we started to, like, kinda come up with locations and stuff
Yeah.
was just, like, a few weeks before,
Sure.
but it had been, like, in the making for a little while.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So you guys drive.
Mhm.
I assume, did you drive? Fly? How did you get
Yeah,
out
we
there?
drove, that's what I
You
just said.
drove. Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, road
yeah,
trip yourself out there. And
mhm.
so you get out there. What's next? Like, where do you even start? Because
So
let me ask one thing.
mhm.
You guys didn't use guides, right? You just did this on
No,
your,
we did not use guides,
yeah,
it was just
exactly.
us.
All right. So let's hear.
Yeah, so we got out there and we were mainly kind of going around Zaxon Bog
Yep.
and also like some other areas that some people that I had known had helped me out with, like, some different locations. So we got out there and it was, it kind of wound up being it was a slow winter for owls up there, which we didn't
Great.
really, the trip was already like pre planned. So like we were going kind of no matter what.
Yeah.
But then we got up there and everyone's like, there's like no owls around. We've been out here for days and we haven't gotten any. And I forget like we ran into this one guy and I forget exactly like how many sit are usually like in Zaxon Bog, but it was usually a lot more than were there for with the winter that we were there. I think there were only like I think he said four that were like projected to kind of be or like
Yeah.
estimated to be around the bog that winter.
Yeah.
So I know I was kind of like freaking out a little bit, like, oh no,
Sure.
we came all this way, we might not get stuff. And our first day up there, it pretty much rained the whole day.
Oh,
So
that's
it was
rough.
35 degrees outside and rain. And as
Oh,
my friend Matt had said, who was on the trip, he's like, this is the coldest rain we could possibly have.
that's true. Yeah.
So we were driving around all day and we got some great stuff. We got some great shots of like evening grosbeaks and pine
Nice.
grosbeaks, and that was a new one for me. But we didn't get any owls, and we spent tons of time like driving down all these random dirt roads. We even wound up by Duluth, down some like dirt
Yeah.
roads around there, like looking around for them. And me and my friend Jonathan, we have thermal optics.
Hey, I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. Unfortunately, the video paused on its recording and messed up. So I don't have video of us for the rest of this, but the story and all the photos and videos of behind the scenes should be good to go. Enjoy the rest of this. Uh
We
huh.
were using like we drive down these roads really slow, and then we were scanning with the thermal optics to try to detect heat, which
Yeah.
they work really well when it's that cold out. It
Sure.
really picks up heat. So we found a ton of red squirrels with the thermals, but
Not
no owls
quite what
for
you
that
wanted.
first
Yeah.
day. So yeah. So then the next day it was a little colder out and it was like snowing just like a little bit, but there really wasn't like that much precipitation. And since the day before the weather was so bad and stuff wasn't around, I'm like, I feel like there's got to be an owl out today because they
Yeah.
got to hunt at some point, and I feel
Yeah.
like after that rain, there's probably going to be something out today. So we started off really early. It was like long before the sun was up because dawn and dusk is the best time to kind of
Okay.
look for great grays and the owls out hunting. So we started off, this was actually in Zaxton Bog. So we're driving down these roads and I was in the back of the car. My friend Matt was driving, and then my friend Jonathan was in the passenger seat. And we're looking all around with the thermal. And I was actually kind of looking like behind, like I was kind of like looking back a little bit with the thermal. And Jonathan had stopped scanning with the thermal, and he's like, "Oh, there's a raven in the snow." And Matt slammed on the brakes, and he's like, "That's not a raven. That's a great gray owl." And then, we all kind of freaked out, and we saw it just like right at the edge of this little field, just sitting in the snow that had apparently like just dove in for a
Yeah.
mouse. And that's when you could see this print in the snow that we
So
found of
cool.
where it had originally been. And then after we looked at it for a minute, we saw it like fly off into the woods with a mouse. So
Okay.
we're like, all right, we got to track this thing down now. So we're going out and we see, I feel like there are actually multiple of these holes in the snow of these prints, if I remember correctly. This was like
Okay,
the
cool.
freshest one, but it obviously was kind of an area where it seemed to be hunting. So
Yeah.
we're walking back in the woods, and as we're walking, we almost immediately find it. And we made sure to be respectful. We were very quiet and made sure to stay like a good distance from it and watch its behavior. And as you can see in like this video here, it's just preening and kind of chilling out and was
That
completely
snow is
fine
so
with
deep
us.
looking too.
Oh yeah, the snow is in certain spots it was like well above my knees in some of the drifts. But yeah, you can see
Very
it.
cool.
We all kind of like we split up a little bit and we're shooting from different angles. And for the most part, I had just kind of stayed in this one spot for a while and was shooting a lot more of like your more like basic kind of shots, like just
Okay.
it was kind of like chilling out, sitting there on a branch. And then at one point I went over to where Matt and Jonathan were and we're shooting, the angles that they were shooting with.
Yeah.
And we were probably there for probably around like give or take 40 minutes.
Okay.
So just like kind of sitting there with it. It may have been a little bit less than that. I feel like sometimes when you're photographing stuff, I
I
feel like
know.
it's like it seems like a lot longer. Like you'll be there and then you'll look at your phone and it'll be like, oh, that's not
Yeah.
quite as
Have you ever gone back
long
and look
as
at the
I thought it was.
timestamps of photos? I've had it where I'm like, oh, I was with that bird for a half hour, and you look and it was like 7 minutes from the last photo to the first photo. I'm like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
It's crazy
exactly.
how time gets warped like that.
Yeah. So, but at this point, we were just about leaving, and I think like Matt was already like kind of out of the woods and was like walking back to the car, and I was by Jonathan. I'm like, hang on a second, because as I was looking out, I could see through all of the snow-covered branches. There was like this little
Yeah.
tunnel that kind of framed out the owl. And I'm like, let me just try a few shots from this angle. Like, just kind of like as we're walking out, like, let me try this out. And I took a few shots. I didn't think Jonathan did too. And I'm like, that's my favorite photo. I
Isn't that
already
cool?
know that that's going to be my favorite photo that I took of this bird this whole time. And it's just kind of funny because this was in like the last few minutes,
Yeah.
just fired off a few shots after having been there for at least a decent amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny how that happened.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something, being a birder and a photographer, like, when you see something rare or unusual, I feel like it's always cool, even if it's not necessarily like the best photo opportunities. But when you have the chance to really get to sit with a subject
Sure.
for this long and really enjoy it, not only is it such a cool experience, but I feel like it gives you a lot more opportunities for photos because I know if I had just like gotten a few photos and been like, oh, I got it, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have come away with this photo because I got this photo in just like the last little bit
Yeah.
that it took, just like kind of moving around and wasn't even really thinking of it. And then I'm like, that actually looks really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So,
So
And
Based on
then,
that, Emma, do
yeah.
you feel like you would like? Did that teach you a
Mhm.
lesson? Do you approach scenarios like that a little bit differently now, or like as far as
Mhm.
keeping your eye open, looking for those additional opportunities compared to just
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
say sitting in the same
definitely.
place
I
and that
feel
kind of
like
thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely kind of taught me to like move around a little bit more
Yeah.
and kind of look for different perspectives that I might not necessarily have thought of before. And this is actually a little bit of a plug to you, right? But before I went on this trip, I've been watching a bunch of your behind the scenes videos that you
Oh,
do.
nice.
And I remember I just watched one before the trip that was like you had been talking all about like the importance of like foreground and shooting through foreground and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So I definitely feel like that kind of influenced this shot and
Nice.
kind of helped me kind of envision that a bit.
Just for everybody, so you
Mhm.
know, I did not bring her on just to plug me like that. No, I
No,
appreciate it.
no,
Oh, that's so
yeah.
great. Um, I,
Hmm.
this photo to me really does exactly that, right? The
Hmm.
foreground gives such a sense of depth. It gives
Hmm.
a sense of mystery almost, you know? It makes the bird feel almost more ghost-like just through that snowy scene.
Yes.
And it
Yeah,
also
that's what I
does
like
this,
about it.
yeah, it does this wonderful thing that is you've included a lot more space and habitat. And honestly,
Hmm.
without those foreground branches, it'd probably be a little busy, right? You included a lot of branches and other stuff in there.
Oh
But
yeah.
because of that foreground, it
Hmm.
simplifies it, it minimizes it, it either
Hmm.
blurs it completely or just softens it
Hmm.
overall. And so it allows you to back up, include more habitat, show more of this animal's habitat, and
Hmm.
still keep the focus on the subject, which is like a huge thing. That's a wonderful thing to be able to
Hmm.
do and not an easy thing to do. So great
Hmm.
job on that for real.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I
All right.
appreciate it.
So let's talk about the edit a little bit. So this is
Hmm.
the original right out of camera. Great
Hmm.
job. Like you shot it, great composition to start out with. You didn't
Hmm.
really have to
Thank
do a
you.
lot here. So in the edit, what were some of the things you were thinking of trying to do? Like what were some of your goals
Hmm.
with the final edit on this image?
Hmm. So this specific photo of the bird, I'm pretty sure I edited this one with you on
Yeah.
a Zoom call, but because I had this vision kind of in mind for it, but wasn't quite sure like exactly like the best tools and everything and like how to kind of go about it.
Yeah.
But kind of goal was to make everything around the owl light and just kind of have the owl stand out more and be darker than pretty much everything else in the shot.
Yeah.
So all the trees and kind of, lightning some of you could see like in the original there are the original definitely looks a lot more branchy
Yeah.
than the edited version. So it was just kind of about lightening the image and kind of drawing your eye into the bird
And you
and
did a
like
great job.
creating that contrast.
It does it so wonderfully. It really does. I mean, if we
Hmm.
look at this, I mean, obviously our eye as the viewer still goes right to that bird.
Hmm.
It's the most in focus
Hmm.
thing. It has eyes for us to
Hmm.
connect with. We know it's the bird.
Yeah.
But the other branches do certainly grab attention, whereas they do it so much less
Hmm.
here. And
Yeah.
again, I'll point to the foreground allowing you to get away with pushing an edit like that a little bit further, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because if
Oh,
we think about,
definitely.
yeah, if we think about that bird just sitting there with none of that blurred foreground, if you
Hmm.
all of a sudden selected everything else and made it washed out and less contrast, it'd look kind of odd. It'd be like, well, why is the
Yeah.
bird contrasty, but everything else is not? But
Hmm.
because of that blurred foreground, it's like there's already this established blurring and
It
lightening and
allows you to get away
softening.
with that. Yeah,
Exactly, right?
exactly.
You're just leaning into
Hmm.
what you've already started with in your original shot, and I think it
Hmm.
works so well. So, what an awesome
Yeah.
image. Thank you so much for sharing this story. It's a great story. It's really cool to hear
Oh
how you
yeah.
planned it and
Hmm.
you guys got yourself out there, put in the time and effort.
Hmm.
Uh, how many days did you end up staying out there entirely?
Well, I think the total of the trip was 7 days, but we drove out. So I think roughly we were probably there for I think like 5 days,
Okay.
five maybe like 5.5 days, like around northern Minnesota looking for stuff. So
And after day two, did you see
mhm.
many more great grays? Did you have many more
No,
encounters with them?
this
No?
was the only great gray we found the
No
whole
kidding.
trip. So and I guess also what also made it so cool is the fact that like there
Excuse me.
was
Sorry about that.
no problem. Was the fact that it was like just me and my two friends that got to
Yeah.
see it. Like there wasn't like some big crowd. It wasn't like one of those things. It was just us and the owl, which I always really like experiences like that. I think it can be cool when there's, sometimes when there's lots of people around and a lot of people got to
Sure.
experience it or whatever. But I really like those more like intimate moments
Yeah.
with the birds, if that makes sense, where it's just, it's just kind of not a lot going on and you just got to like really focus on photographing it. So, but yeah, this was
Perfect.
the only great gray we found the entire trip. And we looked for them every day, pretty much,
Wow.
wherever we were, because we were out before dawn and then after dusk driving down the roads. And no matter where we kind of were on the trip, we always kind of spent a little bit of time like with the thermals and cruising down the roads.
Yeah.
And this was the only great gray. And then it was funny because a few hours after this, we wound up getting a northern hawk owl too.
Nice.
And it was the only northern hawk owl we got the entire trip. So one morning we got the two like main northern owls and then nothing else the whole rest of the time we were there. But we got lots of other cool stuff. We got, Bohemian waxwings.
Oh, nice.
And common redpolls. I'd mentioned the pine grosbeaks, the evening grosbeaks.
Yeah.
And we got some great shots of white-winged crossbills. And
nice.
We got a bunch of stuff, but as far as the
that
owls
was the
go,
owl day. Day 2.
It was just that. It was the owl day. Day 2
nice.
was the owl day.
So how long before you're planning on going back again?
I don't know. I definitely want to go to northern Minnesota at some point again, but honestly, I think I want to try out Canada.
Yeah.
I think somewhere in Canada, because I know that there's great grays around there and some hawk owls too. So I kind of want to try out like a different, just go after and target some of these birds, but at a different location.
I'd be doing the same. Yeah, I would do the same thing. I love exploring new places, and you've been doing it a bunch, traveling a lot. So yeah, I totally get that.
And I also feel like sometimes when you go to different spots, even if it's to photograph the same birds, the photos are obviously going to look different because it's a different area.
Yep.
It's like more opportunities to do different types of creative shots.
Totally agree. Mm-hmm. Emma, thank you so much for joining me, sharing the story.
No problem.
It was a great story. I love this photo. It's a beautiful shot. Congratulations on it. And
thank you.
We'll keep an eye out for what you got coming up next. All right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Take it easy.
Thanks. You too.